This is the story of a spring rendezvous that could not take place because of an evil virus that struck the whole of humanity. A rendezvous that for the last 28 years has united passionate amateurs of historic automobiles, thanks to the efforts of one man and his team. When it was clear that the Tour Auto Optique 2000 could not take place in April, Patrick Péter immediately responded in the best possible way.
En fait, on a été parmi les tout premiers à déplacer notre épreuve.
We were among the first to move our event. I think it was early March when we had a conference and a meeting with all the participants. And it was the same day President Macron held his speech, but we had already prepared a change of date 2 weeks before. So we scheduled the event for 4 or 5 months later, and we thought that was more than enough. But apparently that wasn't the case. But we got here in the end.
On pensait que c'était très large, en fait c'était pas si large que ça. Mais bon, on y arrive.
So here we are on Sunday, August the 30th and Monday, August 31st. Among the participants, there is a tangible excitement, for they can finally live their passion by driving their cars on the French country roads.
Tu te rappelles de ton numéro 144. De même qu'année dernière, je suis responsable, j'ai failli venir avec les stickers déjà collés.
Where's my back with the shirts? Backup battery, that goes into the glove box. If we get lost, it works! Are there mini fuses in this car? I know you want to navigate very well, so I took a compass. I even took my fog glasses. Call to the team of pushers at 3:30. We push in the first car. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Some 200 teams gather under the dome of the Grand Palais, a structure designed by Gustave Eiffel.
Ça va à droite, les gars. Hôtel 66. Ouais, tu peux la reculer un poil.
Next one, please. This is your first Tour Auto, right? This is for technical scrutineering later on.
Faut le retenir, ce numéro.
All right, that's that. Let's have a look at the engine now. All right, everything in order. Have a lot of fun. Every year the organizers pick a theme to put the spotlight on a brand or a car model, and this time the honor befell the Porsche prototypes. In the Grand Palais, one could admire a 550 Spider, you know, James Dean's car, 5 of the 50 Porsche 906 that were ever built, and a 904, a car that always brings joy to its owner.
Oh bah, le plaisir, il est multiple. Pour moi, c'est déjà une auto sublime. Dans
The joy has multiple facets. For me, this is a sublime car. By its looks, its shape, it exudes a certain frailty and power at the same time. So aesthetically speaking, I like it a lot.
Beaucoup. Le dommage, c'est que je peux pas profiter de l'esthétique quand je suis à l'intérieur. Et le deuxième, c'est que
it's a pity that I can't see that when I'm at the wheel. And secondly, there is the engine. 210 brake horsepower, that's not bad for such a light car. It's a joy to drive it, thanks to its power and weight.
Puissance avec brio.
We'll get back to these wonderful racing machines in just a little while. But now it's time to close this opening chapter at the Grand Palais and get some hours of rest for everybody involved. For on Tuesday, it's not only time to start a new school year, but also to get the Tour Optique 2000 underway, a special edition for more than one reason. Being a driver or co-driver during the Tour Auto does not leave much room for rest. The sun isn't even up when the crews are already back at the Grand Palais. Not really awake for some, but all are happy to get the adventure underway.
C'est tôt, c'est beau, c'est frais.
We're here, we're ready to get started. We're in the best shape. Start of a new adventure. The tour gets going now. We'll see a lot of spectators along the road, and we get them some pleasure as well. We have never been better prepared. It's impossible to be better prepared. 5 days of racing, that's the schedule for this year. A nice trip through France with stages towards Clermont-Ferrand, Limoges, Toulouse and the Pont du Gard. The circuits of Magny-Cours, Charade, Léthenot and Paul Ricard are the icing on an already delicious cake. In total there are 1,986 kilometers to cover, 100 of those on closed roads, with 9 special stages against the clock. And we're off to Montlhéry for the official start of the Tour Auto 2020. The first stage is held towards and on part of the mythical Speed Oval. This is a perfect setting to start this clearly out of the ordinary Tour Auto. The Linas Montlhéry Autodrome was inaugurated in 1924 and was an example of its time. At the beginning of the 20th century, all major circuits had a speed oval: Brooklands, Monza and of course Indianapolis. Back in the day, car performance stood for top speed and speed records. Between 1925 and 1939, 86% of all world records were beaten at the Linas Montlhéry Autodrome. We have the number 1 of the competition because we have one of the oldest cars at the start and certainly the smallest engine with only 850 cc. That is why we start first, and the aim is not to be caught by the cars behind before the end of the stage. And off goes the Pichon Para. It seems like we're back in 1955, but unfortunately the car quickly shows its weaknesses. Fingers crossed that it will be able to make it to the end of the stage in Clermont-Ferrand. That is also the case for the GS of François Alain. The car does not even make it to the concrete of the Speed Oval.
Oui, c'est clair, on l'a fait. Non mais t'inquiète pas. Donc là c'est juste la bobine qui a cramé, quoi. C'est le truc à la con, et la bobine d'avance elle est pas avec nous. Donc on va la récupérer, c'est rien. Rouler, on va se débrouiller, t'inquiète pas. Ok? Ouais, t'embête pas. Une erreur d'aiguillage de pièces détachées, c'est pas grave.
During the early morning of September 1st, the Autodrome vibrates by the sound of the historic cars. 12.5 kilometers of warm-up with a mandatory passage on the banking. Smiles all around at the end of the stage. It's magical to be able to drive on this iconic autodrome. The stage was gorgeous. The oval is always a pleasure. You get up high and then come down to avoid mistakes and keep your eyes on the wall. Never. I've never been here before. It's a great discovery. Fantastic, especially the start of the banking. Fantastic, really. And how was your day? It's only the start. Well, it's going rather well for us as well in these early stages of the Tour Auto, thank you. And while we're at it, this car really struck us during this Tour Auto. It's a Datsun 240Z, a Japanese coupe with flowing lines, and its 6-cylinder engine produces a magnificent sound. Between 1969 and 1973, this car was mainly built and sold in Japan and the United States, so it's pretty rare in Europe. The car made its name in rallying, for it was in a 240Z that Jean Todt proved his talents as a co-driver at the side of Rauno Aaltonen. This car in particular has a very touching story. I got to know this car thanks to a friend, the owner. And then he fell ill, and on top of that his car was stolen. Unfortunately he passed away, but not before he asked me to find his car again. Which I did, but unfortunately it was almost completely destroyed. The rebuild took 7 years, and when it was finished I took it to show it to one of my friends, Arnaud Mordac, and he told me that his dad did the Tour Auto with the exact same car in 1973. This car originally was not on the cars eligible for this event, but we took it to Patrick Péter, told him it did the Tour in 73, and we could enter this year's race. And now we want to bring it to the finish in honor of my friend. Eligibility, that is the key to be able to enter the Tour Auto. All models that participated in a Tour de France automobile between 1951 and 1973 can enter. There are the well-known models, of course, but also some rare specimen like this Honda N600, only the second four-wheel vehicle of the Japanese brand. When it was introduced in 1967, the car started a revolution. The engine looks like a motorcycle engine, but everything on this car was made especially for this model. The gearbox, the 2-cylinder air-cooled engine, with both valves lifting at the same time, and that gives the car its unique sound. At the time, this was a 600cc car producing almost 45 brake horsepower. Compared to a regular Peugeot or Citroën, that was enormous. And Christophe's enormous merit is that this car is still driving, for parts are few and far between these days. So even in the regularity category, it's better to take it easy on the Magny-Cours circuit. And most of them do the same, because everybody wants to get to the end, and even though they are competing against each other, there is a lot of respect between the participants. They all care for their cars and adhere to social distancing, something that is quite fashionable these days. No door handle to door handle racing here. The first day of the competition ends in Clermont-Ferrand, a city marked by the Michelin family, the archetype of a family-run business in the 20th century, which has formed the city and the whole of the region. And here is the Pichon-Parat Dolomite again. This car, still in its original paintwork, was a barn find discovered by its current owner Hugo. It did the 1955 edition of the Tour de France automobile, but at the end of the first day, the car is suffering. So Hugo, a Pichon-Parat engine, you can find it at every Pichon-Parat dealership, right?
Alors, c'est pas si rare. La voiture est très rare parce qu'elle a été
Well, it's not that rare. There were only 10 of them at the time, but the engine is based on a Panhard Gina X, which was a rather popular car in the 50s, and which you can find in plenty of models. It was built between 1948 and 1962, so there is plenty of them around.
Qui a été fabriqué entre 48 et 62, donc on en trouve.
Romain, Hugo and his dad, the mechanic, now have just under 2 hours to change the engine within the time limits. In this first service park of the week, everybody seems pretty busy, especially since I will tackle one of the monuments of French car racing the next day. Charade, it's the oldest circuit of France that is still in use. It goes up, it goes down, turns left and right, it's a real circuit. It's a varied track, the rhythm changes a lot. It was created by nature, not by the hand of man. One mistake and you hit the wall. There will be a lot of testosterone. It's a ballsy track that held 2 or 3 F1 Grand Prix. It's also fun for the spectators because it's always spectacular racing.
Moi personnellement, je trouve que pour faire le tour auto sans passer par Charade.
A tour auto without Charade would be a pity because the track attracts a lot of participants and they can discover the whole of our country.
Sur le tour auto pour découvrir aussi notre pays.
The sun sets over the Grande Halle d'Auvergne.
Inch'Allah. Inch'Allah. Allez, plus qu'à.
It will be a short but useful night of sleep for all.
Hello.
Hi. Good shape. So how's the engine? Perfect. I don't know how you do it as a co-driver. In fact, I really hate it. So we go half and half. But yesterday on the stage, I was really scared. So we do half as a driver, half as a co-driver. So we'll do some stages. Yes, I will do some. Wednesday early morning. Today is roller coaster day. Charade is the setting for today's action. It gives us the opportunity to explain the rules of this event. Since there is a large panel of car models that participated in the Tour Auto between 1951 and 1973, the participants are divided in 3 categories, in order to be able to organize some rather well-balanced races on the circuit. In these 3 categories, the aim is simple: go as quickly as you can, both on the stages and the circuits. Times will be added and form the final result. In category 3 are the oldest and least powerful cars: MGB, Jaguar Mark II, Austin Healey, Austin Cooper, to name but a few. In category 4, the horsepower goes up with the Shelby Cobra, E-Type Jaguar, BMW 2002 or other Porsche's 911 2 liters. This category should produce the overall winner in the VHC category, the Véhicule Historique de Compétition.
Poste 16, oui, on a un problème avec la ficelle, elle arrête pas de lâcher.
Bah, décroche-toi, Fifi, s'il te plaît. Ouais, ça tient. C'est parti. Allez, c'est parti.
And then there is category 5 for the most recent and most powerful cars, built between 1966 and 1982. They can be prepared for this event in the spirit of the year they originally competed in. The most eye-catching cars here are a Ferrari 308 Group 4, Porsche Carrera RSR, BMW CSL Batmobile, or even a BMW M1, one of the most popular cars in this Tour Auto. These are divided in 3 groups, G, H and I, but cannot compete for the overall win. Which brings us to the end of this purist explanation. We hope you now understand the subtleties of the rulebook. This man does. Damien Koller, who in 20 participations together with his wife Sylvie climbed up the result ladder. Last year, the little Lotus Elan 46R became a bit obsolete and no longer fitted their ambitions. That is why they entered the monstrous Shelby Cobra 289 this year. This is a Cobra CSX 2136, which is important, for all Cobras around the world are noted in a report. And this car has a 4.7-litre engine and produces 467 brake horsepower for a weight of only 1,000 kilograms. It's a perfect car, she goes like clockwork. The brakes are interesting, but we cannot take any risks when braking, for this is a quick and rather heavy car, and we have to be able to stop it in time. We will have a lot of fun in this stage. I used to have one of those, a Rally 2. I did hill climbs with these in the 80s. This is a very well-equipped and lovely car. Lovely car, right? Wonderful. Have you seen the rear window? GT4, it's very GT4-like, isn't it? Oh la la, long wheelbase. The Tour Auto Optique 2000 brings a real festival to the towns that host the regroups. They are often invaded by amateurs and connoisseurs alike, and it also gives them the opportunity to bring their own little gems. Did you have one of those, Ari? No, I was too young for those. It was the generation before I started to drive. The youth of today do not have the same car culture as we did. They consider a car as a consumer object. For us, for our family, it was extraordinary to own a car. Just after the Second World War, not everybody had a car. An automobile really stood for something back then. And all these lovely cars remind us of our childhood and plenty of other things.
De l'enfance, de plein de choses.
Voilà. On y est.
C'est bon?
Oui, c'est bon, c'est prêt.
There is an impressive number of fans along the roads of the Tour Auto, whatever the date the event is held. Everywhere the participants are welcomed with an extraordinary enthusiasm. The stages, the circuits, the service parks, regroups and even lunch stops are invaded by fans of all ages. During this year's edition, we tried to reduce the communication of the places where we would stop in order to try and limit the number of spectators. In normal times, some 100,000 fans stand along the roads of the Tour Auto, and this year we tried to keep a low profile. That is why we were surprised to see this many people here. But fortunately, everybody respects the rules and wears a mask. That's a good thing. And we're off with Isabelle and François Chatriot now. They are the road openers for the event and have an important task. As a road opener, you have to check whether everything is okay, whether the stages are safe. In the previous one, for example, we saw some gravel on the road, so we checked if it would be dangerous or not. That's the technical side of our job. And then we set a time, which serves as a base for the regularity competitors, who have to do a percentage of our time. In regularity, there is just under half of the participants of the Tour Auto. Their aim is not to go as quickly as possible, but to maintain a predetermined average speed. They have a choice between three averages: low, intermediate or high. Inside the car, the hardest work seems to be done by the co-drivers.
La régularité par rapport à un rallye classique, c'est complètement différent.
Regularity and the traditional rally are two different things, certainly for the co-driver. My task is the complete opposite of what I've always done in rallying. Normally, I would look at the road to know what note to announce. But here I don't see a thing of the stages because I'm always looking at the sheet with the average speeds. On Chantal Powell's, there is a good reason why that name might ring a bell, for she was François Delacour's co-driver in WRC. Here she's driving with Melina Priam, but regularity is pretty new for her. The speed aspect is not present, but there is an average to adhere to, so in the technical bits it's fun to drive. We are lucky to have an Opel GT, a very handy car with a very good chassis, so I think Melina is having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it as well, so I probably want to do more after this. To take the win in regularity, one needs experience and perfect coordination within the team, especially since there are no electronic instruments allowed in the Tour Auto. This is an old-school rally, much to the delight of the purists. François and Jean-François Nicoul are one of them. Having won 3 Tour Autos already, they quickly take the lead of their category. To win in regularity, you have to be thoroughly prepared. You have to have an odometer that works perfectly and also the tools to repair it if necessary. You have to prepare everything to the last little detail. That was not really the case for the team in this 911. 10 days before the start of the event, the co-driver threw in the towel and Josh had to make a very last-minute call to his pal Chip. In these bizarre times, it wasn't easy for the American duo to get their car to France, but they managed it anyway. Since the start, they are absolutely enjoying the event, especially Chip, for he hadn't visited France before.
I've decided that we're living in the wrong country. It's just not encouraged that we were able to drive like this in the United States. We would get arrested, and here, you know, you drive by these towns and the schools and everybody's screaming and waving, and it's just the right spot for someone passionate about driving. It's amazing to be here. We're loving it.
I love it. To see the people on the side of the road, we honk to everyone and wave, and everybody waves back. It's really lovely, and you can see that the people are really into it. So it's nice to be able to see all these beautiful cars come by, some faster than others, and get to enjoy it.
Only 50 Porsche 906 Carrera 6 were made, and since the Porsche prototypes are the guests of honor in this year's Tour Auto, there were many of them on the roads of France. 500 kilograms, a 210 brake horsepower 6-cylinder engine. In 66 and 67 they won everything: circuit races, hill climbs and even the Targa Florio. Porsche had to wait till 1970 in the 917 to win Le Mans, however. The very first prototype of the brand was this 550 Spider. Ricardo Rodriguez was the first owner of this car. He bought it when he was only 15 and had to change his permit to be able to race with it. It wasn't really legal, but he did it anyway and won plenty of races with it. So this is a car with a great pedigree, owned by one of the greatest racing drivers in the world, and it's still here, even in the colors of Ricardo Rodriguez.
Et aujourd'hui, elle est toujours là et elle fait toujours de la course avec sa livrée de l'époque de Ricardo Rodriguez.
Let's continue the joy of the Tour Auto, and one has to admit, without showing any partisanship, that the 60s Ferraris are among the most beautiful cars ever built, and the 250 is probably the most gorgeous of them all. There were 6 of them at the start, only adding to the status of the Tour Auto. Purists immediately recognize the Colombo V12, but this one is not mounted in a 250. It's in a very rare 225S. Only 5 were ever built on a Turboscoca chassis, a monocoque tubulus chassis. This was a revolution in 1952, especially since it had some of Vignale's best designs as a bodywork. This car drove the Mille Miglia, but also the Monaco Grand Prix, the single one that was held for sports cars in 1952. Every day it's the same story. The co-drivers get out their markers. Once they receive the road book of the day, they analyze their itinerary and especially the special stages. During the Tour Auto, the timed sections on closed roads are held secret up until the last minute. The road book is very succinct and only states changes of directions and possible dangerous situations. The aim is to avoid too high a speed for the cars, for drivers and co-drivers have to navigate by eye. Let's see how Philippe Van Drom and Fred Vivier cope with the stages in their Ford GT40.
Gauche serrée. Dans 420 mètres. Gauche, gauche, gauche là-bas. Dans 300 mètres, épingle gauche. 300. 200. Là, épingle gauche, prend large. Au 30, terre-plein, prend gauche. Là. Gauche, gauche, gauche. Ouais, j'y vais. Dans 200 mètres, gauche serré, gauche très serré. Là, gauche très serré. Dans 200 mètres, gauche très serré avec pont au milieu. Continuez comme ça, il y a un bon rythme là, il y a un bon rythme, on va le rattraper. Hein. Équerre gauche dans 200 mètres. 100 mètres, équerre gauche. Change de revêtement. Dans 200 mètres, Y gauche. Dans 200 mètres, épingle gauche. 100 mètres. Là, épingle gauche. Dans 200 mètres, gauche long. Long gauche. Il n'y a pas de danger, mais c'est un long gauche. Dans 200 mètres, long gauche encore. Vas-y, fonce. Non, je vois rien. T'es arrivé là? Non, je vois rien. Voilà. Ça va bien rouler là, non? Ouais.
During the stages and the road sections, the tour auto takes the participants along France's nicest roads and villages. Sometimes there is a possibility to stop and admire the setting, but most of the time the rhythm of the event is rather frantic. This year there are plenty of newcomers at the start, and one of them is Thierry Boutsen, former Grand Prix winner. This is one of the Belgians' first events since a severe crash during the '99 Le Mans 24 Hours. Sometimes these roads are pretty narrow and we go rather fast, 160, 180 kilometers per hour. And we have a small car. I imagine the big boys go a lot faster. It's not that easy, but I learn and I progress. I also adore the enthusiasm of the fans along the roads. It's fantastic.
Les gens sur le bord de la route, même sur les ponts d'autoroute, il y a des gens qui nous font signe, c'est fabuleux, c'est génial.
And when a threefold Grand Prix winner gets behind the wheel, things start to get serious. It's very impressive and very reassuring as well. There is no denying he has full control of the car. Rallying may not be his speciality, but we go fast, brake hard, and always in a safe and secure way. It's really enjoyable. I'm a lucky man. He has accepted to drive with me. There was also another former professional driver at the start, a real endurance specialist that was part of the Mazda adventure in the Le Mans 24 Hours. Together with Russell Murphy, a windswept David Kennedy was at the wheel of a very rare ACA's Rut Speed. With a 6-cylinder engine, straight out of a Ford Zephyr, it was the predecessor of the famous AC Cobra. Only 37 were ever made.
It's a fabulous car. It's quite old, so it's a bit of a beast, quite frankly. And these cars tend to have more power than grip. which is the way cars used to be. And so therefore you have to be very alert with a car like this because it can bite you so quickly.
They are the first ever completely Irish team in the Tour Auto, and they are smitten.
We know we need to look smarter. For next year we will take lessons from our French colleagues, and everyone's been so warm and welcoming and understanding of our poor French. It's 35 years since I left school, so my French isn't what it likes to be, but next year I will be better at French. We will look smarter, we will have more cars, we will be more organised on maps and navigation and technique and team building, and David and my colleagues are so competitive to build a team that can come back and really compete in a meaningful way.
On the third day of the event, there is no circuit racing, but there is a never-increasing tension. At the front, the teams start to think about the overall win, and the gaps between the cars are very small. Once again, Swiss driver and double winner Rafael Favaro is among the candidates for the win, having switched from a Lotus Elan to an E-Type Jaguar.
La Lotus, on doit attendre.
Yeah, with the Lotus I had to wait for things to happen, others that made mistakes and all that. With this one, we're at the front, leading a pack of 5 or 6 cars, and we try not to make any mistakes. The other teams, having set their eyes on the win, are La Journade and Boucher, also on a Jaguar. Köhler and Laboine driving a Shelby Cobra. Mr. John of B together with Sibel on a Porsche 906. Caron and Magnin with a Cobra. And another Cobra duo, Sean Lynn and Nigel Metcalf. On the stages they fight for every second, but outside the car they get along fantastically.
Yeah. Nine litre.
Yeah, twin turbos.
Twin turbos.
Like mine.
Yeah.
Yours has 4. 4 turbos. Yeah, and 4 wheels at the rear.
The day between Limoges and Toulouse proved to be very long and hard, both for man and machine, and some did not make it. Ludovic Caron had to give up all hope of a good result after suffering technical problems, while for Sean Lynn and his co-driver the verdict is even harsher. They have to retire.
Yeah, it's over unfortunately. We had a really good morning, not too bad. First special stage was okay, but at the end of the first special stage we lost the fuel pump. So we managed to flick to reserve, which was fine, and then we didn't have time to change the spare pump. So we ran on the second stage with the spare pump, and halfway through some equipment moved in the back and it pulled the connector from the pump. So we stopped and we didn't have a reserve pump.
Not a drop. During the whole of the Tour Auto, I did not add one single drop of oil. Friday, 6 a.m. Toulouse. Today it's the regularity drivers that take to the road towards the Pont du Gard first. So it's irregularity for the alarm clock. Yesterday it was set at 8:30, 9 o'clock, but today I'm not even sure it was 5. It's a very tough day for us, for we were last in the last group yesterday evening. It was late, and this morning it was really early. And we'll try not to fall asleep at the wheel then.
Donc c'est assez compliqué. On va essayer de pas s'endormir au volant.
While the regularity drivers get underway in the early morning hours, the drivers in the competition categories get to their cars in the Parc Fermé. During the night, the fight for the win had become even tenser, with only 12 seconds separating the top 4 teams. Theoretically, the Porsche 906 should have the advantage on the circuit, with the Jaguar and the Cobra feeling more at ease on the special stages.
Voilà. Bon,
But today we have 2 stages and 1 circuit, and the circuit comes last, so we'll only know after Le Danon where we are. But I think it's fantastic to have 4 cars in 12 seconds on the last day. It's been a while since we last saw that.
Ça fait longtemps qu'on n'a pas vu ça sur le plateau et je trouve ça très bien.
On se bat et on remarque.
We're in a close fight and we notice there are parts that suit us better and some others not. On the twisty bits we are a bit quicker than the Shelby, but the long straights are on to their advantage. In the end, all is balanced out, which makes everything very interesting, especially since we have a lot of fun as well.
Donc c'est super intéressant. Bon, et puis surtout il y a une superbe ambiance. Quoi. On a 2 jours.
Yeah, we have 2 days to work it out now. And I think we'll let them win. The elderly first. Normally, it should be him. Or him with his experience. And he's the little unknown. You know, what will happen at Ricard and Le Danon?
Elle sort dans 37 km et nous on continue sur la route. On va sortir à la sortie 45. 45. Ouais, s'ils trouvent une station, ils vont s'arrêter.
During a race day, the cars are put to the test, which is pretty normal for racing cars. Still, they need to be looked after carefully, which is certainly the case for monstrous cars like the GT40 of Philippe Van Drom.
La boîte, ça va?
How's the gearbox?
Ça passe?
Well, the second I missed it twice, I don't know why.
Okay.
But then after that there was no problem. And this morning I had a little issue with first gear as well, I don't know why. Or the BMW M1 of Nicolas Leroy-Fleuriot. Yeah, we had a little issue with the throttle cable. Fortunately, our guardian angel François was just behind us with the service Subaru, so we're trying to fix it now so we can get to the service park tonight. It's a small issue, but without throttle cable we can't get anywhere. After every stage, after every run on a circuit, the mechanics are ready to give the car some TLC. When it comes to the mechanical side of things, some are left to their own devices, sometimes because of financial reasons, or some just do it for the fun of it. For Salim Bouziane, it's a bit of both. This Peugeot lover has built his 204 Coupe Group 5 from scratch, and the car is identical to the only one in existence. This is a genuine prototype, invented by Gérard Welter and Michel Meunier. WM for those in the know. A real oddity, this 204. We needed a mold, so we made a mock-up on a 1:1 scale, and on the base of that mold we made a glass fiber body. So it took a lot of effort, both financial and otherwise, but if you have a passion you really have to go for it. The livery is exactly the same. Aerodite was the sponsor of Monsieur Welter back in the day. And we really wanted to maintain the same color, the same livery. When people talk of the 204 Group 5, they always call it the 204 Aerodite, so we couldn't take away its nickname. Only the Tourangeau can tell these tales. And these two have plenty of tales to tell as well. Loïc Perron and Ari Vatanen in the same road opening car. Admit you would love to be a fly on the roof to listen what these champions have to say. But thanks to our onboard camera, we could take a listen anyway.
Oui, je suis Ari Vatanen, voilà, merci. C'est Loïc Perron à côté, il a pris un coup de vieux, mais bon.
Ah ouais.
Ça va être drôle. C'est dommage que ton nom n'est pas là. Tout le monde te connaît, mais par le visage. Oui, oh. Mais c'est sympa, c'est marrant quand même. Il y a vraiment des passionnés.
le milieu automobile et la voile en général, la mécanique, c'est...
Car racing and sailing, it's actually the same sport, and if you get the honor to be at his right, it goes both ways, it goes both ways. I'm really a really lucky guy. I made some navigation mistakes, but he put everything right. No, he really did well in navigation. When you know someone for, what is it now, 40 years, there is a connection. And cars and sailboats, they have a lot in common. We are adventurers, adventurers of life.
On est aventurier, aventurier dans la vie, Loïc et moi.
Merci. Okay. C'est comme un gâteau aujourd'hui.
And yes, that's part of their long day as well.
Oh, so...
Hello.
Hello, guy.
Believe it or not, this is where things might change in the overall rankings. In the race of Category 4, Mr. John of B has some time to make up. Since his German machine is feeling well at ease here, it's time to attack. But this small contact with Damien Köhler does not stop the 906 driver on his way to the stage win on the Lebanon circuit, whereas Damien Köhler manages to take some time on the Jaguars. It's an exceptional end of the day on the Lebanon track, and after seeing these images, nobody dares to claim that there is no close racing in historic racing. And this is the reward on Friday evening, an exceptional service park at the Pont du Gard, a completely new destination for the Tour Auto Optique 2000. Cricket's vineyard Cyprus is the end of summer warmth, and the Mont Ventoux. This is the Provence, the setting for the final day of racing. There is 12 kilometers of special stage to go, together with 10 laps of the circuit Paul Ricard to wrap up this 29th edition of the Tour Auto Optique 2000. Great effort from the number one team at the wheel of their little Dauphine Gordini. At the wheel of one of the oldest cars in the field, they drove more than the others.
On a conduit tout le temps, on s'arrête pas pour manger, on va pas aux étapes.
We drove all the time, we did not stop to eat, we don't stop at the chateau.
Donc
they bring us a sandwich together with the fuel, and the sandwich which we eat whilst driving.
En roulant. Donc si on veut respecter les limitations,
if we want to stick to the timing, there is no other way.
C'est quasiment impossible pour nous, parce que dès qu'il y a une montée, il y a des.
From the moment there is a steep climb on the roads, we have to take it in first gear.
C'est hyper demandeur.
But that's all quickly forgotten thanks to the joyful experience of these 5 days of racing.
On n'imaginait pas.
We never expected to see so many people along the roads. And they all showed us immense support, took our picture, gave us the thumbs up. They've come to see us in the service park, telling us stories on how their parents got married in a Dauphine, or on how they got their permit driving a Dauphine. It's an extraordinary car.
C'est une voiture extraordinaire.
The final day is a simple one for the Nicole family, winning their 4th Tour Auto Optique 2000 in the regularity category. The best thing, the most emotional aspect of this is to be able to do it as a family with my dad. These are really very special moments. That is what I will remember the most. That's the main reason for our joy. In fact, this is a sort of an excuse to spend some time together. But we want to do well too, of course. And we make some new friends along the way as well. On the Paul Ricard circuit, Mr. John of B makes a mistake and loses all the benefit of his great race. Just like Jean-Marc Bussolini, who has to retire due to a mechanical issue with 5th place in his sights. In the end, Rafael Favaro and Luciano Nicolet take the win with only 14 seconds in hand over Jean-Pierre Lajournade and 21 seconds over Damien Köhler. It's the closest podium in the history of the Tour Auto Optique 2000. It's great, of course, but it was also nice to spend some time with friends and to be able to drive fast, which is what I like the most. And winning, if you drive fast, you win. It's that simple. We got along fine in the car, had a great time, and that is what a Tour Auto is all about. Every team has a story to tell, and that is nice too.
Merci.
Tellement particulière, merci messieurs.
This September edition will always keep a special place in the history of the event. But now there is only 8 months' time to prepare for the 30th edition of the Tour Auto Optique 2000 in April 2021.
Et un bien beau podium de gens heureux.